What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Die Is podcast. Today there's one extra of us, which is very exciting. And this video is coming out on Sunday, which is Father's Day, so we would like to recognize the fathers of the Die Is cast, Justin and Nick.
And soon to be Alex.
Yeah. I meant the fathers of the channel. Not the fathers who happen to be here.
The godfathers.
Yes, the Dons. And we're also joined by Brendan Melnick.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Sleepy.
Sure.
Famously after my bedtime.
So you guys have had quite the exciting last, couple weeks?
Yeah. Yep. Last 2 weeks.
Yeah, you want to explain your...
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Funny you should ask. So we got to go and play the Kansas City Open Teams Tournament as part of our team, Run KCMO, and had an awesome time.
What does Run KCMO stand for?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
And we had a great time there. It was my first teams event. My first time really having that experience of not just list building for myself, but list building for the team.
Mostly for me.
But also, working through the meta, working through what our matchups were going to be and what we wanted to bring as a team, how my list fit into that. And I thought it was really a great time seeing that side of it. And really in a team's environment, one of the things that I pointed out when I was talking with Tyler about this the other day was that it really felt like a situation where you can take the kid gloves off and run kind of the most degenerate filth that you might be tempted to run in a singles environment, but that is either so skewed that it's going to have really rough matchups, or that you're just going to make your opponents feel like crap during the course of the game. So you wouldn't do that in a team's environment. You don't have to worry about that as much.
Some people don't really feel that way in general, but
One of the nice things for us, too, is that you guys were doing kind of play-by-plays on our Discord channel, which happens to be linked down.
Well, it was him who
was trying.
Yeah, because my games were going all the way to time.
All the way to time. But yes, you were going through game by game on our Discord channel, which you can join down below. So, what did you guys bring to the teams tournament?
Sure. So it was 4-person teams.
4-person teams.
Originally, it was billed as 5-person teams, but then cut down to 4-person teams.
He was our 5th.
Right.
He dropped. Our 4th person dropped. Nick came back on.
I was a substitute.
Yep.
Happy to be. And so my list was Carried Round Overlords list, and it was my first time playing Carried Round Overlords in a tournament with the new book, so that was kind of an interesting experience. I really wanted to do what I normally like to do, which is mixed arms, and so I had a couple of frigates, 15 Endrin riggers, 4 foot heroes, and then 15 thunderers. So I had a big shooting block with the bridge and the chemist to deliver them, and then a couple of melee pieces as well to skirmish. In hindsight, I think I probably would have been better off with a full Thunderer complement.
Yeah, the 30 to 35 Thunderers.
Right.
but that's it. Just 30
just 30 to 35.
Did you feel like you were handicapping yourself by bringing the worst army in the meta? Or?
Well, compared to...
This is a joke for 4 people.
Yeah.
Compared to the other Carried Round lists at the tournament, I definitely felt like I was unfavored against all of them because they were the full Thunderer blocks, every one of them.
So coming into the tournament, you build this army. When you're coming to the table for your matchups, what are you looking to send the KO army into?
Low wounds, fragile. I would have really liked the Hedonites matchup. I felt pretty good into most destruction armies. And although my results
Except for
didn't
the
bear
time
that
you
out.
played the destruction armies.
Right, and my results against destruction armies were not great, but I felt like I had a good matchup,
yeah.
right? I didn't want to see very strong attrition armies, so I didn't want to see things like Soul Blight, right?
260 zombies.
But things like Tzeentch, Hedonites, which has made a big presence, And then things like...
I was surprised at how little... Like, there was no zinch there.
Yeah,
I couldn't
expected
believe
a lot
that.
more. Certain corn builds I would have felt good in, and then certain corn builds I would have felt really bad in. So
Sure.
that, that's such a
The
widely diverse
Bloodthirster list that I got to play against, I think you would have liked to see that one.
For sure. I didn't want to see something like 60 Blood Warriors, but 4 Thirsters would have been right up my alley. So, I mean, that was the general matchup that I was aiming for, and that would have been kind of the same whether I was on that Thunderers build or this mixed arms.
So let's talk a little bit about this. So obviously the frigates were kind of the hotness coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And the tournament you were playing was pre-FAQ that hurt the
Post FAQ for
Caradron's FAQ was in full effect.
Oh, it was.
Yep.
So you could
pre
unleash...
FAQ for Soul Blight and OBR.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so you could be unleashed Hell.
Yes, and that was very significant in at least one of my games. Yeah,
And it happened.
Yep.
And that is why, that's the fundamental reason why you would rather had more Thunderers, I'm assuming, just because frigates are like a little worse now?
Just the extra durability. So I had the 4-up rally article, so my 1 Thunderer block was very, very durable, but the Endrin Riggers don't benefit very much from that because there's 6 or 10 wound blocks. You can run them in 18 wound blocks. I didn't have any sets of 9, but they become so fragile that it's unlikely to get recurring value from the 4-up rally, whereas if you're running 2 15s of Thunderers,
you have a lot of chances at getting what you need.
Yep, and even if one of them is shot off, if the other one is crippled, you're still recurring it unless they can clear all 60 of those wounds on a frigate. Yeah. So it felt like those were in a better spot. They also can push more easily into a 1-drop, and I was a 2-drop, which was really significant when we were looking at those pairings to say, is this going to be a good matchup for me? Well, they outdropped me.
Yeah.
How were drops in general among the top tables? Like, was everything
a lot of
1
drops? A lot of 1s.
I would say 80% 1s, ballparking. Right.
That's
a lot of 1s.
That's something we're recording right before the new GHB, and obviously there's a new edition on the horizon. But it would be nice to see that changed sooner than later.
One of the things that I've always wanted to see in this edition, and this is their last General's Handbook to really attempt it, is the core rules specify that you roll off for priority, and the drops is just the tiebreaker.
Yep.
I'd love to see that for one portion of this edition because I think it would fundamentally shake up list building. You'd see people push to as many drops as possible so that they can gain that information rather than as few drops as possible.
And then just win the roll-off.
Right, and then just win the roll-off.
And there is
Roll
still a
sixes.
small benefit.
Warhammer,
What's
fine.
the odds of when you factor in a tie? How much of a benefit? It's like 56%.
17%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's still something. I mean, to go low drop for.
Yep, for sure. So I'm hoping they play with that. They've still got their one more chance before 4th edition.
And they will not.
It's unlikely. Well, it's such an entrenched thing that drops dictates priority in match play. I think they'd get a lot of outcry against, and that's why I would have loved to see it in a 6-month GHB where they could have played with that short-term, small experiment where people may not have liked it. It may not have been a successful experiment, but it's less costly when you got that short
very
time
small window, especially right before 4th.
Right.
So, like, if this was the battle scroll in the spring, where your worst case scenario is this is 3 months of pain and suffering, and they go, okay, everyone was really mad about that.
Right.
Yeah.
At the potential benefit for 3 months of kind of radically turning things on their head in terms of list building, which I love things that come along like that.
I've always wanted a die roll for priority because it is a dice game, and who goes first and second is, obviously such a huge part of it. And to take that completely away from any like randomness at all, unless you have the same number of drops, then whoever is you do it by attack.
That played a
defender.
significant factor in 2 of my games.
And that it really radically affects your deployment, because if you know that you're going to have the choice, you can really lean into things from a deployment point of view in a way that you couldn't if it was uncertain.
Yeah.
So
I so want them to do after deployment roll off, and then that's it.
40K does that now,
Yeah.
right? And
you don't get a choice.
It's not
in
even a
40K,
choice, right?
Winner goes first.
Right.
But in 40K, you very rarely care to go second unless you're deploying for it.
Sure.
The only real benefit is 5th turn, you score at the end of your turn. So it's a little different there.
This
but
isn't a 40K podcast. Come on.
yeah, sorry. But yeah, I would love to see that, and they won't do it, but
Sure. Just briefly, just temporarily.
Yeah.
So we're kind of burying the lead a little bit tonight. Brendan has been wanting to talk about his list.
Mm-hmm.
for quite
What did
some
you
time.
bring, Brendan?
So you wrote me a list, basically.
Well, I made a suggestion here or there.
So I've been busy with some other stuff for the most part, and so the Run team is the team that I've been on for several years now, and normally I have either captained or been like the pairing guy, and in this situation, I don't really even play almost at this point. And so I basically said to the team, like, you tell me what I got to run. I'll go over here and say, hey, get all your models out of your basement for me, please, and I'll figure it out. And we were pretty set on running a corn list of some variety, and 60 Blood Warriors was what had been pitched. Kind of basically copying the Team America 60 Blood Warrior list.
Which is a very strong list.
Very good list. And you had kind of tossed out, hey guys, I think we're sleeping on zombies. And you'd gotten some pushback on that. These Blood Warriors will rip through them. And so you and I sat down and put that to the test. We played a mission where the advantage of what the zombies were going to bring wasn't going to be at its full force. Basically, putting the zombies on the back foot and just seeing what can we do. You made a mistake on literally your first dice roll, and gave me a blood tithe point so I could murder less in your turn.
So it was really setting the zombies up into the worst possible scenario.
And you won by that much. And we looked at the end of that game and went, I think this will work.
Right.
I think we got this.
So the final incarnation of the list came down to 260 Deadwalker zombies.
Yes. Yeah, so the list was Virkos, Belladama with the Hunter's Snare, so she counts for 9 on objectives, with the Ulfin Cairney Phylactery, so the 5-up ward, wholly within 9 for friendly summonable Virkos units, so everything. You had, and I gave her Spirit Gale because it was a fun spell to have against a lot of my pairings, where I can just kill a bunch of goblins and force the battle shock test.
Yeah.
I had Necromancer with Tunnel Master, and he had the -1 to wound, -1 damage spell. Such a good spell.
Waste Away.
Yeah, Waste Away. And then I had our boy Torgilius,
the
cannon, who most people killed like top of 1 because they acknowledged that his shooting prowess could not be ignored.
Right.
The wholly within 12 inches 5-up ward to friendly Virkos summonable units.
Incidental.
Right. Totally on the side. And then Gorslav, who was basically there as insurance to get our grand strategy, which was Empire of Corpses, which means I have to bring back 3 destroyed summonable units. He can only bring back Deadwalker units, just for free. So effectively guaranteeing that. Then 3 units of 40, 7 units of 20, all of that fit into 2 battle regiments, 2-drop, 2,000 points on the nose.
And the 2-drop is really important there because that list it has very little ability to get on and push something off of an objective.
Yep.
But it's almost impossible to shift it off of the objective.
It takes about 9 turns
right.
to get the army off the objectives.
When we were looking at lists and I was starting to look at the zombies list, one of the things that the old book was really lacking for a zombies list was that you still needed to be able to kill things typically to get your battle tactics. You still needed to be able to play an offensive game.
You don't have to do that.
No.
The battle tactics are so dumb.
In the new book. And likewise, the grand strategy. You don't need to be anywhere special. You don't need to
You
kill
just die.
things. It just happens.
And your ability with the zombie war scroll triggers with your models just dying. It is so incredible how little you had to do.
Right.
Like, set your army, and then basically go, what automatic battle tactic am I going to score this turn? Thank you very much. 5 points. Over to you.
And I think we say this to say that this is something that needs to be addressed and fixed.
Oh, yeah.
You leaned into it for this one weekend, for this one team's event. The gloves were off. But this is something that I think really needs to be addressed because it is going to be coming into tournaments in a big way once people get the painting meta sorted out on those 260 zombies, unless we see an FAQ.
Luckily, someone owns 180 of them.
Well, you have to have a subtle 180.
What did you get 180 zombies for?
Well, there was a time on the channel you can go back and watch where I played 140.
Yep.
It didn't end up working out perfectly.
And you're like, let me
it
get
should've.
four, and you're like, let me get 40 more.
And I wanted 3 max units.
Yeah,
So
if I had just 40 more zombies, I'd have won this game.
Yep.
Well, that was 140 with Nagash.
Yeah.
So if you pull the Nagash component out of that list, there's a lot more room for zombies.
Way more zombies. Yeah, so basically the principle was you reached a critical mass of wounds that your opponent couldn't get through. You're going to be rolling a 4-up in your opponent's turn, a 3-up in your turn to get a unit back summoned 3 inches away from your opponent, wholly within 12 inches of the gravesite. Oh, and also heroes, which is a rule that I forgot I had the whole tournament. It didn't make a difference. And then also Gorslav is going to be bringing another unit back in the back, and you just keep sending these waves of units up board. So, there were 2 games where I played against Gitz, where the Squig Herd is just chewing through units, but I just feed him a unit every turn, and it means that he can't move on to something and make my life difficult. He's just stuck there forever, fighting 2 half units of zombies that kills one, the other one's there. I send another one in, he kills this one, I send another one in, and
When we were
So the
going
MVP
through,
was movement trays?
yes, the MVP was movement trays.
I'm pretty sure the police would have been called if you didn't bring movement trays.
Sure.
I had an opponent round 5 who did not have movement trays, and he had 60 skeletons and 40 zombies, so 100 models, nothing in movement trays, and I'm sitting there like,
That sounds.
oh my god!
you want to use some of these?
Yeah, I'll go find some spares.
Kill my models so I can give you my movement traits.
When we were looking at pairings for things that we thought might be a threat to the zombies list, well, there were very few things that seemed like they were just going to win, but there were a lot of things where we looked at it and said, this has the output to deal with this, but it only has 10 turns to do it, and it can't do it in 10 turns. We looked at things like, a lot of the killer units, the Squig Herd, for example, and a lot of things like it. Well, if that Squig Herd unit, that one unit, kills a unit of zombies every turn, not just every round, but every turn, they don't get through the army.
Right.
And so it just sitting on the objectives, holding them there, scoring those easy battle tactics, absolutely oppressive.
I worked really hard.
Was it fun to play?
No, it was terrible. And to a player, the feedback after the game from every single one of my opponents was, "Wow, this list was miserable to play against. You were a nice guy. That was awful."
Yeah.
So, but you were 2-drop. Everything was 1-drop. You were a little worried about the ability to shift.
Mm-hmm.
Did you run into any 1-drops?
Game 1, I ran into a 1-drop, which was an OBR list, and I wasn't too worried about that just because I was going to be able to outbody him. There was no way for him to block my ability to put 40 models onto an objective. There's no way.
Just not fast enough.
There's no way to string him out.
Not enough units.
There's not. Yeah, it is. Cool, you do some damage. I end up killing a bunch of your stuff back. Neat. Round 2, played against a 2-drop. I won the roll-off.
That's over.
Pushed up the middle. Round 3 was against a bunch of Bloodthirsters. He was a zillion drops, so I got to set up. Round 4, he was a zillion drops on Gitz, and the difference in that game was he had 2 units of Spore Splatter Fanatics and only the Worthy that he... so I had budgeted for that 2d6 movement to be a 9, right? That's a 75... There's a 25% chance that each of those individually are going to hit a 9 or higher. Okay. Meaning that most of the results are going to be at 9 inches or less than.
Yeah.
First one rolls a 10, and I go, well...
That sounds about right.
Okay. Second one rolls an 11, and I go, okay, that's a problem. Because now I don't have anywhere to put my zombies.
Yeah.
And he just parked him on the front of objectives.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he wasn't able to get far enough to block out, which meant that I had to take the cunning maneuver early, which exposed my necromancer more than I would have liked, and ultimately that ended up costing me the game because, and this is my fault. I played Boingrot Bounders in game 2, and there was like a little spot where they could have landed, and I was like, they need to roll like an 11 or higher to be able to fit a guy.
And that never happens. We just
and he rolled an 11, and it's just like, okay. And then this game, I had it spaced out. I was like, he's got to roll like an 11 or a 12 here to be able to get my necromancer. He rolls a 12, and I went, okay,
You deserved it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, moving gets off of only the worthy when one side is protected by Squig Herd, and then the other is a brick of 60 gits that are like woven around, and I kept making my ward saves on my zombies that he was trying to kill, and I was like, I need to fail this roll and then roll a 6. So I ended up losing that game, which is what it is. But if he doesn't kill my necromancer, I win by 3. Like if I just hold on one more turn, I win by 3.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it was a 6-round tournament or a 5?
6.
6. Okay.
So then, game 5, he was more than 2 drops, but he was Legion of Blood, so he was going to be able to pre-nerf park the 60 skeletons, 30 on each corner in Jaws, which was fine. I just have more bodies than he does, and I'll just push him up the board. And then the last round was a 2-drop Magician of Nurgle which I won the roll-off for, and then just got to
Run.
put my units on the table. So
that was you guys,
Mhm.
and then John was playing
Teclis Castle. He won Teclis Castle.
Less said about that, the better. And then,
and Murgonk. Yeah, Murgonk was on OBR Crematorians. So this was, as Brendan mentioned, before the OBR FAQ. So they still had the Harvester interaction with
Filthy,
the
filthy Harvester.
Very.
do you want to
very
describe
fun.
how that changed? So before they
Terrible.
could come back during the middle of combat, right?
Right. So at the end of every activation, essentially, after wounds were allocated, you'd roll, and whether it was opponent models killed or your models killed, you'd get to roll for them and add wounds back to, typically
Heal
bringing back
units,
your
bring
Mortec
back
models. Right. But they changed it from that perfectly reasonable place, which needed clarification but didn't really need a change.
Could they have just said not enemy units and it would have been fine? Or
No, they needed clarification on the timing. Right, there needed to be some clarification on the timing because there's some really weird interactions.
Specifically
in a
with
couple of places.
crematorians.
Right. Crematorians, and then things like zombie kickbacks can get really weird.
Forever combat.
Right. So they just needed to clean things up a little bit. Instead, they said, well, we'll just wipe the slate clean here. We won't have to worry about this model anymore. And they made it so that the Harvester is just at the end of the phase, specifically the combat phase, and it's only models that were slain in your unit.
My beautiful boy.
We've sold out of our stock.
What have I done to
Bring
my,
it
what
back.
have I done to my beautiful boy?
So, the Harvester in Crematorians specifically, very unappealing. Crematorians, as a result, much less appealing than it was. I think it's still got some play on the...
But it's basically just ponies at this point.
Right, the horses become so much more efficient than anything else there. But anyway, Murgonk was on that OBR list, tanked
1 drop.
very effectively,
Yeah.
had Archon as his casting dominance. One of the things we talked about was whether you should bring Catacross in the list or not, and ultimately we kind of decided that the extra durability from Catacross was a little bit of a hindrance in Crematorians, and so spend those points elsewhere.
And we proved to be correct in that, right? He went 6-0.
5-1.
Oh, 5-1. Sorry. The other thing that made his list unique is he had the Soulsteel Carrion, where other lists really just only had the Bone Tithe Shrieker. The Carrion was going to basically neutralize a fair number of matchups, right? You'd basically just park it on an objective, and hey, all your stuff doesn't count, because there were tons and tons and tons of armies that were 1 and 2 wound models, right?
Right. Yeah.
KO, Soul Blight, just a bunch of stuff that he doesn't have the bodies, right? I had the 1-drop pairing against OBR, but he didn't have Carrion, so all the objectives were fair game for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we saw a lot of the OBR were teched specifically against shooting. They had the Aura of Sterility, some Null Myriad as well to get the magic protection, and that was effective. It was good, but it seemed like just having the ability to hold those objectives and in a dominant position and win on the primary was very effective.
And then we had the -3 to charge trait, so we were teched specifically anti-combat.
Right.
So ours was an OBR list that no one else had a like for like for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about how team matchups work, how you come in, and how matchups are decided specifically for the foursome?
Sure. So there are other ways to do this, and the way that
I really didn't like this pairing.
Right.
system.
I thought that this pairing system. I thought it was a very well run tournament. That it was a great time. They did an awesome job, but we can pick at some nits
Pick
here,
some nits.
right?
some
And
nits.
the pairing system, I felt was poor.
Extremely.
Right. So how it worked is that you rolled off against your opponent,
Well, you paired into a team.
Right.
So Team A versus Team B.
which was Swiss.
Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. There was some, adjustment to make it.
And then Nerds United, and
Right.
it was a magical moment where we all held hands and there was world peace for just one moment.
As it usually happens.
Yeah.
Right. But you get paired into your opposing team. They had 4 players, you had 4 players, so you each had 4 lists that your captains brought to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Captains rolled off. And the winner of the roll-off was...
Got to pick the table.
Right. So we called the winner of the roll-off the loser of the
pairing
pairings.
process.
And so they would pick a table, their opponent would put up one list. And so then when they put up one list as the defender, you would put 2 lists to counter it. They would pick for their one list which of those 2 lists they wanted to play against. And then that roll would switch with all of the lists back in the pool. So each team would lose 1 list at that point. That roll would switch. The first team would put 1 list out, 2 to counter it, and pick one of those. And then you get into the situation where you've each got 2 lists left. So one team puts out 1 list, you put 2 to counter it,
Yeah.
and they're effectively deciding both of the remaining matchups in that pick.
Yeah.
The way this works out is that one team effectively gets to choose 3 of their pairings. The one team gets to choose the first pairing out of the 2 lists given, and then the other team, because of just process of elimination, gets to pick the other 3 pairings, which
Gotcha.
in a 4-person format, 3 wins and a loss
Is an automatic
win.
round win, yeah.
Right. And that was something that we were able to look at and lean into a little bit and take some very bad matchups because they meant that we were getting 3 very good matchups on the back end of them.
So your strategy was usually to present like a layup for them to pick.
It not necessarily. We had to look at what they had available, and if they had 2 hard counters against what we were sending out there, then we had to really think about whether that was something we wanted to pull out of the pool. Mm-hmm. If it was, we'd throw it up there, and they'd give us the 2 hard counters, and we'd pull the one thing that nobody else wanted.
The
to play
hardest
against.
counter,
right?
yeah.
And just take the worst loss we could if that meant everything else lined up.
Sure.
Well. But if it wasn't that cut and dry, right? Then
Which it wasn't, always.
Right.
Now, so that's a bad way to do it from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What's the way you're used to seeing it happen?
You can describe it better than I can. But
Yeah, so
both defenders.
So with 4 players, the right way to do this is both captains present a list face down to each other simultaneously. Both teams then reveal those lists simultaneously, and you go, I gave you Caradron Overlords, you gave me Khorne. So we, go back and huddle, and then basically the process occurs simultaneously. You will put down 2 attackers for the list that they defended with, and they will put down 2 attackers for the list they defended with face down. Trade it, reveal them. Okay, I thought this was coming. No, I didn't. And those other lists are out of your hand.
Yep.
So then you pick the pairing, for this one, and they're going to pick the pairing for that one, and that pairing is revealed at the same time. Those lists, so this one goes over here to play on this table, this list goes over here to play on this table, and then now you have remaining cards in hand. Basically, the list that you didn't pick plays the list that's left in your hand, that goes over here, and they do the same thing. Where you're picking 2 matchups apiece, it's blind, so...
and it's inherently fair, because both teams are doing exactly the same thing every step of the way.
Exactly the same time. Where you have to do predictive analysis of what your opponent may or may not do.
And you can mind games your opponent a little bit and maybe come out on top of this process, but you're not coming out on top because you get to go first or go second.
This other process that Kansas City Open did is you're operating with perfect knowledge every time you make a pairing decision.
Right.
Which is lazy. It's also for the loser of the dice roll, which means the winner of the pairing process, you get to decide 3 matchups, which means that you should, at worst, put yourself into a draw. There's no reason that you should have any worse result than a draw.
Well, you might get beaten on skill, right? They might have a bad matchup and just beat you.
Sure.
Right. But you should be able to put yourself into a situation where at least you're favored.
Right.
This whole explanation process of how this works tells me 2 things. 1, I don't play this game enough, and 2, I'm not cut out for team tournaments.
I think
it's a different environment.
There's so much gamesmanship in the pairing process, at least for the situation that you guys had, not the blind one that you were talking about, but that just goes right over.
Well, I think you'd get the hang of it relatively quickly with a couple of repetitions. I came into it very blind. But
did you guys find out what they were doing when you got there, or did you know ahead of time?
So the pack said something different, and the way the pack was laid out was it was flawed, right? It didn't work mechanically.
It physically did not work.
So we contacted them and
we got a different answer.
Right, tried to get clarification, got a different answer. Things still needed to be sorted out. So we had some idea that they were leaning this direction.
We prepared for both eventualities.
Right.
Okay. Have you ever heard of a tournament doing it this way before?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I've
Did
never
anyone make
seen
the
that.
recommendation or explain how it typically works?
Yes. Many of us did, yes.
But you were able to use it to your advantage to some degree, right?
Well, because we had asked the question,
Yeah.
right? We recognized in the pack something was off. We asked the question. We got an answer. We were like, well, I don't know about that, but it's what they told us. So
Yeah.
we said, well, we're going to prepare for conventional pairings, and we're going to prepare for this other pairings, and whatever they tell us is what is actually happening, we're ready.
Right.
Yeah.
And not everyone recognized that pairing system was, as written in the pack, physically impossible. And didn't ask the question to TO. Oh well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that preparation did make a difference, because we ended up being on the losing side, or the worse side of the roll
For the
out of our
6
6 rounds. But we were still able to leverage those to
We
get
won
us
all
into
4 of
favorable-
those.
Right. And then the
We
situation-
drew the ones we won, so maybe we should have.
Well, yeah, we should have
done
gone
some more.
blind, yeah. But I felt like we were better prepared in most of those situations than other teams, which definitely helped. And it was really a different experience preparing for a tournament like that.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that sort of experience at all. That planning, that looking at opponents' lists and opponents' teams, and trying to come up with a strategy for them beyond, if I run into Lumineth, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I don't really prepare for BCP to randomly generate me
Right.
pairing.
Right. You might think about some of the pairings you're likely to see.
Some of the bad matchups and some of the good matchups, but it just picks for me.
Right.
Sure.
This
But
is a whole new level of
It picks your team random, and then within that team they have the set of lists that they've chosen to field, and that ends up being its own flavor of this, because some of the Lumineth lists were very different from each other. The Gits list that we played round 4 was very different from the Gits list we played round 2.
And that even went further in that some of those lists were better or worse on some battle plans, and specifically on some terrain. Some of us were much more comfortable facing certain things on certain layouts.
Well,
Was
you were
it
the
mystical
expert
terrain
of
or
that.
specific terrain rules?
They had mystical terrain, and then they also had garrisons on one of the 4 tables. So you set up at 4 tables in a pod. One of the 4 tables had some garrisons set up, and so choosing the table for kind of each pairing did have some impact in that way.
I feel like we were the only team that really paid attention to what the table was presenting.
I don't know if other teams were or not, but it certainly was something we were taking into account.
Well, in the pairings process that we had, right, like it just felt like, oh, we'll play on that one. And we were looking at it and we were like, because you had actually developed quite the interesting tactic for playing against Beasts of Chaos, and you recognized in the rounds in which we were playing Beasts of Chaos that there was one table at each pairing that you specifically wanted to play on because it presented an even greater challenge to your opponent than maybe it should have.
What were you looking to identify?
Walls!
Walls. I mean, really, walls around the center so that I had a protected central castle that I could move effectively my entire army into a small protected bubble in the middle of the board. And there was one table, 1.5 tables. Some of the pods had 2 tables set up like this. But one table in each pod where it was especially conducive to the strategy to cut off as many angles as possible from the Beast of Chaos coming from the edge. And so things like that became something that you have no control over in a singles matchup became something that was suddenly part of the strategy in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. I really liked that about teams. I will say that as many matches as possible when you're in a teams environment, you're looking to skew them into hard matchups, right? Or clean wins, accepting a clean loss so you can get more clean wins. So you're looking for more of a rock, paper, scissors experience with your pairings than you typically get, or you never want to get that in a friendly game.
Yeah.
And you don't have any choice about it in a tournament game. But to deliberately skew into those rock, paper, scissors scenarios was wildly different. Yeah.
Very different experience.
Yeah. It was interesting, and it was fascinating, and I really enjoyed the process. I don't think I would enjoy it for every tournament at all, but to experience it once, it was a very different way of thinking about Warhammer.
So Brendan went into his matches a little bit, his brilliant tacticianness of how he guided his army. Do you want to spotlight like one maybe or two of your matches where?
Before you do that, what was your team record at the end?
Sure.
Well, maybe we could get to that at the end.
We don't want to bury the lead.
Yeah, that would.
Hard to tell. I guess my first round opponent was Soulblight, which is a matchup that we identified for my army as very, very difficult. It was zombie spam, 140 zombies, I believe he had.
Like
casual.
Well, the Endrin Riggers...
Double that number, we'll talk.
The Endrin Riggers that I was running will very quickly kill themselves on zombies.
Sure.
Just the output...
Just automatically, basically.
The output that the Endrin Riggers do, the bounce back mortals will clean the Endrin Riggers. And so we didn't like that matchup for me at all, but what it did is it lined up green lights. We had a red, green, yellow ranking system for our pairings.
And some occasional oranges, and, we should have added purples for, things that, there's no way I'm losing this game.
Right.
Those are the games I lose.
Well, and I lost a couple of those. But we knew that as long as I pull that Soulblight list out of the way, that means that none of them can touch the zombies that Brendan had, because that was really a roll-off situation. He was a 2-drop 140 zombies list. Even though Brendan's got more zombies, he's not pushing those 140 off. So by me pulling that out of the list, it opened up greens across the board for the rest of our team.
It's such a crazy way to think about it. If I throw myself on the
grenade,
yeah.
Captain Grenade over here, he's got some stories.
So I went into the game, and I knew that I was heavily disadvantaged. But fortunately, Brendan and I had just repped this matchup, knowing that it was a terrible matchup for me, but because it was an extra practice rep for both of us.
I didn't know how to play my army.
Sure. So I had a little bit more insight than I normally would have, and I was willing to do some fairly bizarre things because I knew that was only my only real avenue.
Give me an example of a bizarre thing.
So, top of one, I went first.
Okay.
Bizarre. Bizarre against 140 zombies. A double turn sure would be nice, but I went first. I knew I had to get my Thunderer block on one objective and just make him
keep shooting.
Try dealing with it. And then I took one of my very valuable combat frigates and I threw it into his back line as far back as I could into the corner of the board.
Baiting him to come back to you, or
Baiting him to come back to me. He had a unit of Grave Guard back there. I was hoping to shoot off more of the Grave Guard than I did, but I didn't. But I knew that the only threat piece he had that could deal with that combat boat was his Grave Guard. And I knew that if the Grave Guard moved to the corner of the board,
they're not coming
they
back.
were no longer a threat in the game.
Yeah.
Right? They were going to
They're
deal
done.
with what was there, but I was effectively killing them just by moving them to the corner of the board. And that's how that game played out. It was a really interesting game, and it was very close down the stretch. I ended up squeaking out the win, but it was ultimately because he had to commit his offensive power to that boat in the corner, and then my navigator slowed down. He had Radikar, the beast. My navigator kept hitting Radikar, slowing him down.
Oof.
Grave Guard were back in the corner, stuck there. His zombies were pulled back there.
Was it a damned if he did, damned if he didn't situation, though, where if he ignores them, then you're just kind of like picking on him from behind and
I
threatening
think
to charge some potential like softer heroes and stuff like that?
I think if he and I played that 20 times or maybe 10 times, he would very quickly realize that
That's bait.
he wins the game if he puts those 140 zombies on the circles.
Sure.
There's just
True.
no way for me to
Science.
If he scores objectives,
Right.
he wins.
So I think the play for him was just to fully commit to everything's going forward onto the circles. That would have meant that I was just cleaning his Grave Guard, I was cleaning his heroes, I was cleaning all the things that he spent all of his points for, and it would have been the opposite of how he wants a normal game to go.
Sure, yeah.
But meanwhile, there would have been 140 zombies that I couldn't deal with.
Yeah. Would have been like one of those iPhone games where you're shooting zombies.
Right. And so, I because we had just repped the matchup, I knew that was my only path to victory. He hadn't repped the matchup, and that shows, right?
Well, nice game.
Yeah, I felt really good about that one.
Tell us about one you feel bad about.
Sure. Well, I don't feel bad about any of my games, honestly. I did take some tough losses.
Sure.
But I felt like I played them fairly well and gave myself chances.
Round 3 was bad dice. That was just unlucky.
Well, I mean, dice happen.
Right.
Round 3 was bottom table bullies, and I was against Scooter, who is among, if not the best Iron Jaws players in the world. Just got
If not the most practiced.
right. Got second at LVO playing as Iron Jaws.
Mm.
Right. Incredibly skilled, practiced player with Iron Jaws, and obviously had way more experience in that matchup than I did, and it showed. I felt really good about my deployment and how careful I was, and my ranges and separation.
So,
And-
what was your deployment? Describe that a little bit.
Sure. So it was corners to corners. I believe it was Nidus Paths.
Yep.
And I put my Chemist and Thunderers really back, almost in the corner, not quite in the corner, but very, very back.
To threaten coming back.
I had the
behind
bridge
them.
so that they could
Oh,
vault
yeah.
forward. I didn't want to go all the way into the corner because I wanted that bridge to be able to project out
Sure.
where I needed it. And then I tucked my central boat. I had 2 frigates. One was kind of my command ship with my hero package. The other one was more of a melee-focused impact boat. So I emptied out that melee boat, and I took those pieces and used them as screens. So I had 3 engine riggers on one flank, I had a foot hero on another flank, and then I had that boat tucked back as a second level screen, because I knew that with the possibility of Mighty Destroyers and then a 3d6 charge from the War Chanter, he can get around, get past those first layer screens very effectively. So I gave him first turn, which in hindsight I wish I hadn't. But it felt right at the time, and except for one thing, I felt really, really good about his first turn. So he was able to Mighty Destroyers and fasten his Mega Boss on Maw Crusher up to the front line. My spacing was right, and he was behind my 3 engine riggers. So that was effectively all he was going to get to. But he cast Ravanax then from that Mega Boss with the Arcane Tome. And his Ravanax, so he had moved 24 inches already. He casts Ravanax, sets it up 8 inches forward, hits a big number on the dice, 15, 16, something like that, screams it into my back line, picks off my Chemist.
Oh, yeah.
Takes the bridge out of the game. The Thunderers are now foot slogging.
Oof.
Not exactly what I want. But apart from that, it was really an ideal top of 1 for me. He got some pigs into that boat that I had set up for that purpose. He wasn't even able to take that boat down. He cleared the 3 Engine Riggers and Foot Hero. Great, that's what they were there for. And then so he had his Mega Boss, 12 pigs in my back line, and then a unit of brutes off to the side, and then some Foot Heroes. And he also had the Foot Boss with Destroyer as kind of a
Tunnel
second
Master,
wave.
sneaky, yeah.
Right. So I felt really good about top of 1. And bottom of 1, I cleaned all of his pigs. Right. So at that point, he was down to the Mega Boss and
The Mega Boss.
I'm sorry, which
and the
round
brutes.
did you clean it off?
Bottom of 1.
He has no pigs at the bottom.
No pigs after the bottom of 1.
And he has a Mega Boss and a Mega Boss?
A Mega Boss and a unit of brutes across the board.
Okay.
Right. The brutes were heavily out of position. Just
10
had the
or
Mega Boss
5?
there.
10.
10. Yep. So with the priority roll, if I win the priority roll, his Mega Boss is dead and there's no longer any threats.
Yeah.
Right. He gets the priority roll. The Mega Boss comes in. I really kind of whiffed the Unleash Hell into the Mega Boss with the Thunderers. He proceeds to effectively clean all of the Thunderers. And the reason he was able to so easily go into Thunderers is because my Chemist had died. So in the bottom of 1...
He obviously WAD.
This turn he WAD.
Yeah.
So had the Chemist been alive...
-1 to hit.
In the bottom of 1, well, I would have bridged the Thunderers to a point where the Mega Boss could not get to them. And so he would have spent another turn with the Mega Boss going into something like Engine Riggers, and I would have felt awesome about
Then
that.
you just shoot him again.
Right. But, of course, he killed the Chemist, so the Thunderers were just sitting ducks. And I got the pigs cleaned, but then had no way to stop the Mega Boss from coming in, cleaning him. On the next turn, I had the choice. He finest houred his Mega Boss. He had Mystic Shield on his Mega Boss. I had the choice to dump my remaining pieces entirely into the Mega Boss on a Hail Mary, or try to operate elsewhere. And with him on +2 save, and having lost all my Thunderers and lost many of my combat pieces, the Ravanax had continued to kill my Admiral. It had then picked off something like 4 of the Thunderers.
Don't you have a pretty good unbind though? Or was that
just the
only on
Navigator,
10?
no bonuses.
Oh, gotcha.
Right, and I was trying to get rid of Ravanax every turn, but you got to hit the 7, right? So it killed my Chemist, then my Admiral, then 3 or 4 Thunderers, or maybe 5 Thunderers. Like, it was just wrecking havoc on me. Couldn't get away from it, and so with all that attrition, I committed away from the Mega Boss. Failed the battle tactic because I failed to kill his Wizard with my combat frigate and failed the re-rolling 3d6 charge. It was just a downhill slide that I couldn't recover from. But like I said, I very much had my chances through the early part.
And he
of that
kind
game.
of played to his outs, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
he had to make some Hail Mary plays early that if they go, like if he doesn't get that Ravanax off, like he's just a sitting duck, right? And then he's pretty much
Then
done.
he's dead.
Right.
Yeah, so he played to a very high risk game to get the win, and
it worked
out.
Right. I could tell that I put him very much on the back foot when he gotten all those pigs in, gotten the Mega Boss to that side, and then at the bottom of 1, he just has no pigs left.
Yeah,
Right. And,
that's also
it's very
that's a
unusual.
bad feeling.
Right. So I could see how that was affecting him, and he certainly didn't like that very well. But
I wasn't a fan of that.
priority roll came in.
He had
and he got
18
it.
pigs.
No, he had two 6s, 12 6s.
Okay.
Yeah.
45 pigs. They're all gone. Man.
140 pigs.
So
Double that.
Sorry,
number.
Bone Splitters.
So that was a game that we had penciled in as a green for me, right? And on that battle plan where it was corners and corners, I felt even better about it. And like I said, top of 1 went as well as I could have charted it up. It went exactly how I would have drawn it up, except for that Ravanax. And I should have planned for that a little bit better.
You said you would have gone first. Would you have gone? I mean, he's got to get the Ravanax off. He's got to roll a big number on it. He's got to
he's got to roll an average number on it.
Right.
Okay.
The way he had set up, I feel like I really had some opportunities if I would have gone first. I think I would have had to probably catch that turn 2 priority, but I think if I would have gone first, caught that turn 2 priority, I would have been in exceptional shape. But at the moment, it felt better, especially with how I had deployed and how I had set up. I had to deploy first, and then he got to counter-deploy.
He was going to take his time getting to you. You were going to basically take it off in waves, and you could play the long game scoring and
Right.
take it.
Right. So I feel like I should have gone that. Now I feel like I should have gone that way, but at the time, with what I knew and the reasonable time constraints of a game, I made the best decisions that I could, and it didn't pan out. But it was a really good game. It was a really good opponent. It was great getting to meet Scooter and play with him, and I felt really good about the game, even though it was a loss.
So, let's get to the spoils. To the victors go the spoils, I hear. Now, I don't even know the answer. I talk to you guys frequently. Why do you guys each have 2 trophies?
I don't know.
Funny you should ask, Justin. So
No one knows.
Unclear.
At the end of this, we ended up going. We won our first 2 rounds.
Yep.
SoCal was
That was a great round.
very good round
Who
in
was on
round
the
2.
SoCal team? Any names that would recognize?
Matt Wynn was who I played.
Okay.
Nuge.
Yeah.
I don't know who
I had
else.
Greg
but
Brewster, something like
Bowers,
that.
maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Gits. The only guy from SoCal that I had the immediate name recognition was Noog.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's America's, if not one of the world's best Beast of Chaos players, and you took him all the way to the ropes.
It felt like I had my chances in that game, and that was
And it paid off in your round 4.
right. So that was it was a little bit interesting, and it was a testament to kind of the experience and learning through the experience. One of the matchups that we penciled in as the very worst matchups we could possibly get into was my Caradron against Beast of Chaos.
Sure.
We just didn't. We thought going into the week we thought it was almost unwinnable. Right.
And you had this incredible lightning bolt idea.
I got lucky.
at the Airbnb.
I got lucky.
Was it add 1,000 extra points into your list?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just cheated like crazy.
If I weight my dice down.
So I
So I spent $10,000.
it was what we talked about before, really. Just the terrain helping me to
Getting behind walls.
get behind walls, castle in the middle 3 inches of the board, effectively. A 3x10 block that I could put my army into where he couldn't interact with it from off the board. So he couldn't pull me toward him and then charge. And by doing that, I put Matt, it felt like, into a very difficult position. And we played it out, and Matt knew what I was doing, right? He had been there before. But I could tell that as soon as he saw me do it, it took it from a game that he felt very comfortable in it to a game that he was working at.
Sure.
And Matt is an exceptional player. And
What
so,
was his list? Was his list the Bulgor heavy list? Was it?
yeah, so he was very hammer heavy. He had 2 6s of Bulgors, 2 6s of Zangor Enlightened, not on disc, the flip Zangor Enlightened. And then
Yeah, they're like 90 points or something insane.
incredible output.
And
from
they
him.
have all the. They lose obviously the disc attack, but
Mhm.
everything else is the same. Plus the benefit of
Being
going
cheap.
second, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they're super cheap, and they're fast enough. They move something like 8.
Well, plus they're coming off the
They're
board.
coming off
right?
the board, right?
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, their speed was plenty. So he had 4 very effective hammers. He had 2 Bray Shamans to pull, a handful of screens, including Ungor Raiders, and then he had the Dual Bowl, of course. And so he set up, and he knew how to handle it, but it was work for him, and he was having to work for it. And going down the stretch, my situation was such that round 3 priority, both of us decided the game. Right. So that took, and he won it, and won a very good game, and he's an exceptional player. He deserved that win 100%. but it took what felt like an unwinnable matchup. We found a way to make it something that I could compete in.
So when you got then in round 4, were you like baiting your opponent?
He was basically asking for the Darkwalker.
So
pairing.
was it like, oh yes, wait,
So-
they're definitely going to take this. Let's bait them into it, and then we get to pick all. We'll basically get 4 matchups. We like.
Yep. And it was an interesting situation. They had a Darkwalkers player who had less experience, less reps than Matt, as
Sure.
almost
Pretty much everyone would.
any Darkwalkers players has. And
Your demeanor completely changed in our pairing huddle, where you were basically saying to John, "Give me this guy."
Mhm.
I just took the best Beast of Chaos player in the world to the ropes, to the final bell. I got this guy.
I didn't know that I had it, but I knew that it was not a bad matchup for me anymore.
Sure.
If
If the train wasn't there for your pickings, are you still confident in that?
in that one, I would have felt pretty good,
Okay.
right?
It helped.
If the terrain would have been bad for it, I couldn't have done it. If the terrain had really blocked me from castling into that center bubble, then it would have been something I couldn't deal with.
Sure.
Right. But I get into that game with him. I do effectively the same thing, except a little bit better because I had just learned from my
Yeah.
mistakes, and I could immediately see that it forced my opponent into a very uncomfortable position.
I could see from the other table that he kind of had no idea what was going on.
So could he have, like, just spread, like, the table and just said, you know what, I'm just going to be a presence all over the edge of the board, and
I think that
you
he
come
could
and
have,
get
but
me?
that'd be a
Well-
terrible idea.
So that's I don't know that it's a terrible idea. He actually was built to have the most bodies of any of the Beasts of Chaos players. He only had really 2 central hammers. He had 6 Bulgors, 6 Zangors in like that disc, but he didn't have the 4 hammer presence, which is really what had carried Matt. And so he tried in many ways to do that, but early on he was in his first turn. So I had taken first, gotten into my position, and on his first turn, he was hesitant. He was reserved. He went a half measure and let
I'll
me
never do that. Not
Right.
against KO.
You have to commit, right? And so I was able to just kind of attrition some things down, get some things that I liked how they had shaken out, and then hand him the turn back. And then he had to commit, because round 2 you've got to bring everything in for Beast of Chaos. And then he attempted to do exactly that. He spread out. He brought his Bulgors to the center as a hammer. He brought his Zangor on disc. Because they're so fast, he put them in an extreme corner where they would be safe, but then ultimately he had to have 2 turns of them moving to get them back to be
Yeah.
effective.
Where they'll be safe and not do anything.
Right. And so, he was visibly flustered and knew that he was not going to have any impact on those early turns. And when you bring an army like Beasts of Chaos, you have a game plan. And that game plan is, I'm going to punch somebody in the face those early turns and get that advantage and hold them down. And when you cannot do that and you have to pivot, that's where the reps that Matt had really made a significant difference, right? He knew how to pivot. He knew how
What
he
did
should
he pivot to?
Matt pivoted to full aggression, right? He brought 2 of his hammers in and 2 of the
Chaff.
the shamans with a bunch of chaff in his first turn, so that the only way I could prevent being pulled to the board edge would be to kill all of the chaff and the shamans, which would have, of course, left me not able to kill the 2 hammers.
Yeah.
Right. And so he set up all of that. He went hard, leaving 2 hammers off the board still, so that they could come in once I was pulled. And so, again, my second opponent, if we played that back a bunch of times, would arrive there.
Yeah.
But when you don't have those reps and you don't know how to handle that pivot,
You have to figure it out on the fly.
Right.
And that's where experience matters.
Right. And I didn't have that experience, but I had the idea, and then I really had the validation against Matt that it was a solid
Nice.
idea. So I felt great about that. And again, we turned those two matchups that felt really, really bad into a close loss and then a win.
So was it a clean? So you guys went 4-0-2.
4 wins,
0 and
0 losses, 2 draws.
Right.
So was it a clean first place, or was there any
Tiebreakers.
Right.
So, tiebreakers, baby.
So there was another 4-0-2 bottom.
Bottom table bullies was also 4-0-2, and
They have a gold one of these.
right. So we had gone through an absolute murderer's row, and that was what decided it for us. The tiebreaker that won it for us was
Strength of schedule.
And so we ended up first
First place,
team
best
of generals.
Yep. So that's just strictly on the table.
Mhm.
And then second place overall, which is 50% table, 50% paint. So thank you thank you for the nicely painted
Oh,
walls.
good. I'm glad I could help there.
And then bottom table bullies, congratulations to them.
They have the
flipped
opposite,
this, right?
yeah.
They've got first overall, best, and second team of generals, and they deserve both of them.
Dang, these are sturdy, heavy.
They're actually really nice trophies. I was talking about this beforehand. Each side of them is a different Grand Alliance character.
Did you guys get to put
Boys,
Did you guys get to put the tags on them?
No, they gave
No.
it to us that
Almost-
way.
I was
almost,
like, oh,
almost scenery, right?
I was like, he's got order here.
Yeah.
You played
Yeah.
order, so I
Yeah.
thought, oh, you would have put it on death. But
If I got to, like, if I had so what we had noticed when we got back to the Airbnb was that the tags were on the different faces. I was like, oh, I bet they put a tag on one of each of them.
Yeah.
And we were the only two from our team left for awards because, our other two travelers had left for home
Traveled.
already.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, I should have just grabbed the death one.
Yeah.
Like the
So, very successful weekend. Warp Fire Minis was the best sports out of the event. Shout out to them. We played them round 6. And
Why do I know
had a
them?
great time.
Why do I
They're
read
so-
them?
store?
They're a big hobby store, yeah.
Okay.
in Florida.
A lot of mail order
Okay.
Yeah.
orders.
Right.
It's not a plug for them at all, except to say that they were great guys.
Yeah, and that was our round 6 opponents. And that was a very interesting round for us because John took a loss at a value that was kind of unexpected. I think he had
What did he go up against?
Skaven. And
Was that his only loss of the day?
He had 2.
Two.
He went
He was
4
4
and
and
2.
two.
Yeah.
He lost to Petrifex Elite was his other loss.
Skaven shooting? Skaven what?
Big monsters.
Yeah.
So the list was Thankwol with the Laoshan.
Sure.
He had a Verminlord Warbringer.
You know what? I'm feeling okay
it.
with Thankwell parked in the corner.
Thankwell's
Lao
awesome.
showing in against all those sentinels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Seems decent.
Yeah, and he had the Warbringer with all the
stuff.
toys. Yep.
All the stuff.
And then just a bunch of bodies. I think he had a couple of Warp Lightning
He had
cannons. Hellpit Abomination, which is exceptional. If you haven't played the Hellpit Abomination at 210, you're doing yourself
Really
a
good.
disservice.
Yeah, so he took a 15-point loss. You played Monster Trucks.
Yeah, and I
it
got
went-
Monster Truck.
It went bad.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that.
Monster Truck.
Yeah,
My
Monster
opponent.
Trucks doing Monster Truck stuff.
My opponent was incredibly apologetic as he slid his monster trucks 10 inches or 11 inches at a time into my units and then cleaned them.
I always love when people are super apologetic.
Oh, I'm
You know,
sorry.
listen,
Oh, gosh. That's
we
really
don't
lucky.
have to keep doing
There's
this.
nothing
okay.
more fun
And I'm
than
like,
those four ups on like an
Oh.
11-inch charge.
See, I had to be very apologetic to my opponents. Go like, hey man, you're gonna have to sit here for the full 4 hours. You're gonna
4-hour rounds?
Mhm.
Can
Oh,
well,
good
so
lord.
a half an
Hey,
hour.
can you
What
help-
a
hey,
torture.
Can you help me move some of these?
What a torture
half an
fest.
hour was-
Good lord.
Half an hour was for pairings. So
I
this
don't
was
care.
3.5 hours.
3.5 hours at
4
3.5
3.5 at the table's insane.
3.5 minimum hours at the table.
Oh gosh, I can't believe you didn't get more concessions, but I guess you can't do that in teams.
No, you really can't.
So I took a heavy loss.
Mhm.
John took a heavy loss, and we were the first 2 done.
Yep.
Mergonk.
And so they were feeling I could hear off table. They're feeling great. 2 huge wins. They're like,
Oh, it was in the same round.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this
This
is
is round
this is round 6. And so if you go 2 and 2, if you have an aggregate result of at least 21 or more points, you win the round. If you don't win on aggregate by at least 21, it's a draw.
Yeah.
So with bottom table bullies, they won by only like 6, which means that it was a draw. So we're down 37.
So you guys gotta.
And then someone rolled up with 260 zombies and
33.
scored 50 points to 0. And
We were down
33.
Yeah.
And so Mergant gets a 15-point win. So they're up 22. And we're not supposed to communicate, like between tables on how everything is. But everyone is so stupid loud with how everything is. I'm sitting at the table doing the math going, I'm going to win this game. I know that. How much do I have to win this game by? And in my head, I was like...
Wait, what are you playing against? Let's give it a little bit.
I'm playing against Nurgle.
Oh,
Nurgle.
that's
we'll
a real rough matchup for me.
Morgoths,
Flies.
3 units of 2 Puscoil Blight Lords,
That's
and then
just a
a unit
matchup.
of the whatevers.
The shooting guys.
Yeah, the shooting
That's
guys.
actually decent to have against zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shooting guys are...
One
I mean,
mortal
if
wound
you
at a
were-
time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I wrap up my grand strategy. I am able to deny him his. I'm like, okay, I'm up 3 no matter what. I end up denying him his battle tactic in round 4 because he picks the one where he's got to have 3 units within 3 inches of 1 unit, and he picks basically my unit of dogs, which is like 16 dogs at this point. And throws a bunch of stuff into it, and like it's like this weird curvature. And even if he didn't kill it, like I could have just left a dog like over here, and it's only within 3 inches of 2 units, and he fails it anyway. So I ended up winning by 6 instead of 4, because this was what's the 2 on the side called? The 2 on the side one.
Position of power.
Position over power.
Yeah.
There it is. So I was up 1 point on him from Galatian Champions and hold 1, hold 2, hold more kind of a situation from Battle Round 1. And then we traded battle tactics. He ended up failing 1. Then I took over with the Grand Strat. So winning by 6 meant that we tied the round, meaning that we...
And then you...
Rewind 1 second. Rotmeyer Creed or Flies?
Rotmeyer
Creed.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I thought you were saying Flies.
The shooting
Flies,
unit. Yeah.
Flies into
The one
zombies
mortal
is
wound.
actually kind of interesting.
Well, they only have 21 shots, so.
Yeah, but
unit
I mean,
three.
if you bring a bunch.
Sure, if you bring a bunch, yeah.
You bring 260.
The plague drone meta is not here yet.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. No.
So
Someday.
So you needed to win by... They were up by 22 at the end of their
Yeah,
game.
so
you
I
needed
need...
to
Yeah,
get
I
2
need
points.
2 or whatever.
Oh,
And so,
cool.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you had done the math. I needed to win by 4 in order for us to bring the
I
round
didn't
to a
realize
draw.
you guys were sweating it that hard at the end.
It was very, very tight. And it was...
If somebody...
Mergonk and John had already had to leave.
Yep.
So it was just us there sweating it out. And I can't talk to Brendan, but I'm watching intently. And Brendan could probably tell I'm watching intently
For a
about
reason.
what's going on.
Well,
So literally, if he would have brought like some weaker units into your dogs, do you guys not take the turn?
No, we would have won by 4.
I would have won by
Oh,
4
okay.
instead of 6, yeah.
Gotcha. I missed that part.
Security.
Yeah.
But it was interesting watching that because I knew how your list operated. I knew probably things that their team didn't know, right? Like just a casual observer walking up to the table, they might think that you were at one point you called out that you were a point behind.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that effectively you were 2 points ahead
Yes.
at that point because
Because
your
of
grand
grand
strategy
strategy.
had been
3.
achieved probably 2 rounds earlier.
And he had take what's theirs,
Which
and,
is never
and
gonna
there's
happen.
no way you're
Take
getting...
what's theirs against 260
right.
zombies feels
I've
bad.
got 17 units here. How many do you have?
Yeah.
So
In that mission specifically, there's no way you can put enough units in that box.
Yeah.
Watched it intently. You clutched out the big win, and so that meant that we had 1-4, 2 draws, and
And that was enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome
Thank
work.
you.
And so now you guys have silver, golden tickets, whatever. We're still trying to
Yep.
decipher.
We will be able to attend the
And
World
one of
Championship
us
in
will
Atlanta.
have our
And
airline and hotel paid
Is
for.
that as individuals or teams?
as individuals. Yep, it's
And
just
then
individual.
what date is that?
It's in
November.
December or November. Okay. Yeah.
Like the week before Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
And how many? What's the size of that?
A lot.
It's a
Yeah.
lot because
Yeah.
a lot of tickets are flying around right now.
Well, and a lot of tickets in other countries as well.
Sure.
And yeah, it'll be a big event.
Awesome. And then how did you guys celebrate? The champagne baths.
But,
We went to
uh,
the single worst Brazilian steakhouse dinner.
I'm a big fan
Was
of
it like
Brazilian steakhouses.
like a bridesmaids type Brazilian?
I don't get the reference, but sure.
Do you get the reference? Does anyone get the
No.
reference?
The best references.
It took 3 servers to open a bottle of wine that arrived effectively when we were done with dinner.
Right.
That we had ordered first.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Just push the cork in and start grinding it into the wine.
Well, the first one did remove about half of the cork.
Just get a new bottle.
Yeah, it was troubling, and I kept trying to take over, and they would not let me operate the corkscrew.
Well,
It's dangerous.
next thing
obviously.
they know, your eyes on the end, and then the whole thing.
Suing, and so we got a good story out of the meal.
True.
Yeah, and had a great time.
Well, congrats.
And then we
Thank
drove
you.
home the next day.
Mhm.
Little refresh on just kind of Age of Sigma right now. It's kind of in a we're recording at a horrible time.
Well,
We're
it's an
literally-
awkward time.
It's probably 11 o'clock on the Friday night when probably Coach is going to come out with a video in 7 hours talking about the new GHB that's going to last in a year.
Yeah.
So we do have the new General's Handbook coming up.
We don't know anything about it.
Right. Well,
We know it's
a few
Wizard.
things.
We don't know anything about it.
It's confirmed for Wizards. We know one of the lore spells, which is one of the strongest spells
Horrifying.
that's been printed. It feels like. We know that Wizards are going to have extra ability to push through spells.
Yeah, you guys did not play with realm spells. That's all you're telling me.
Well, fair. There were definitely some broken ones there. And then there's allegedly going to be ways to counter the Wizards, better ways to unbind and dispel.
Yeah.
Hopefully those will come in big, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think Wizards need the help right now, especially with Seraphon rolling out. And so I'm hoping that there is some ability to interact with them and stop them.
Slime? I think he's 9, right?
He's certainly not so many that he can't benefit from the broken rules.
Slans freaking everywhere. Because, I mean, they're pretty easy to
Allied slans
Yep.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But, like, I mean, I think you're being too vague. It freaking sucks that Wizards are getting the bonus because, I mean, if you look at some of the strongest armies, they're really strong casters to begin with.
That's right, Caradon Overlords, lots of casters.
No, there's
Corn,
plenty.
tons of casters.
Soul like Overlords are pretty decent.
The Legion of Blood is caster heavy, yes, but like
So-
it's gonna be
Petrifex,
it's gonna be non-unique.
OBR.
Like that's the critical element here is the non-unique.
OBR
part
doesn't
of
have
it.
good non-unique casters.
They have a Soul Mason and he's fine.
What about the new guy?
The Ossifactor?
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of one-cast wizards, but they're ultimately casting without bonuses, and I think that's one of the tragedies of Hoarfrost being so good. Hoarfrost, for those that haven't seen it, you
CV8.
You roll a d3 effectively, and then you can assign whatever value you get, 1, 2, or 3, to the 2-hit, 2-wound, or rend characteristic of a unit. So if you roll a 1, you make it their 2-hit or 2-wound. If you roll a 3, you make it their rend, and you've suddenly got a combat unit that is absolutely slappy. There's a bunch of armies that would love this, right? Destruction armies would love being able to hit better or wound better. A ton of combat armies would love that extra rend on
Rend
profiles.
4 skeletons.
Well, you can just get to 3, right?
No, they get +1.
Yeah,
you change so the characteristics change to 3,
right.
And then in combat it goes +1.
+1.
Rend 4
Rend
skeletons.
4 skeletons. There's a bunch of armies that would love this.
So 60 skeletons.
But this is casting value 8, and a lot of the armies that would love this the most don't have the bonuses to get there, and a lot of armies that don't need the help have easy
bonuses.
access to
Sure.
bonuses. The General's Handbook allegedly is going to have some ways to get extra dice for casting and unbinding.
Makes it more volatile.
Right.
Allegedly.
But if this is just extra dice, if you're just rolling 3d6, those casting bonuses are still just as significant, or they're theoretically slightly less significant on a bell curve, but very, very significant to have the casting bonuses. Armies that don't have them are going to have just as many problems. And you might see, if wizards become a thing, this anti-magic tech starts to come out, and that anti-magic tech might help against the casting doms that are out there, and it might smother the poor casters that are out there.
Yeah.
So we don't know the
anything,
details,
really.
but it is something where I really feel like Games Workshop needs to tread very carefully, and I hope they're doing that.
Well, the other thing is the books for a year now.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're treading
We
very
know that.
carefully. They
Thank
made it so that
goodness.
it lasts an entire year.
Right.
But I prefer it because now I'll actually buy a book
Right.
for sure, just because it'll be around for a year.
12 months GHB is something we've wanted. Right?
Yeah.
If they're going to print this, we want it to be on a 12-month cycle.
It was silly that they ever went to 6.
Right. I would love to see updates every 6 months.
I think they're going to stay at that, where they're going to do the quarterly battle scroll with the major update at the 6-month mark.
Right. Which is great.
Well, just like a point shake-up and...
Yeah, FAQ, point shake-up.
Yeah.
Maybe rules.
Yeah, like what we saw just before Adepticon last year, where they came out with the hunters and the hunted,
Oh, yeah.
and the extra point scoring mechanic of that, and wanted to shake somebody, like you couldn't have waited like 3 days.
But the battle plans being out for 12 months, provided they're good battle plans,
All new
is awesome.
battle plans. That's another thing. No one's 12 new.
That is surprising.
I like
Battle tactics being around for 12 months, those things really help. They really help everybody, but they especially help newer players that are getting into the games, because I've really noticed that as people are trying to pick up the game, the churn on those has been just
Yeah, it's
too
been
much to
nutty.
deal with. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good thing, but the more responsibility on them to get it right.
Couple possibilities they could use. They could raise points on wizards kind of across the board, especially the good ones.
Yep.
They could make the battalion that usually, we have we had bounty hunters to counteract the infantry, which was overdone, right?
Yeah.
Then we had
By a little.
we had the monster thing to
Right.
prevent.
Monsters gave an extra victory point when you killed
Yeah.
them.
And then, so you had Hunters of the Heartland, so
Right.
you couldn't be stopped or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, so you've always had a specific battalion to kind of counteract. My guess is this battalion is going to be either
Anti-wizards.
a 5-up,
5-up ignore.
The problem with spell ignores is that they're really good in some situations, but there's so many casters that just want to cast buffs.
Yeah,
and the
it's
spell
just,
ignore does
they
not
do
do
that.
absolutely nothing. You
Right.
play Khorne a couple of times. Now Khorne is still good against magic, but you're like, well, I
Okay.
just think this isn't working.
Do people take the I can shoot characters even though they're near a...
Sure.
battlefield?
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yep.
I think it's
I
probably the
don't see it
least
as much as
successful of
Yeah.
all because it messes with the things we talked about before.
Yeah,
traps.
I definitely don't see it as much as you see, as you saw bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters,
And
yes,
I definitely don't see it as much as you saw hunters.
Well,
even.
because bounty hunters in many cases was increasing your damage output by 100%.
Yeah.
It was crazy to play against the Pusco of Blight Lords
Yeah.
without bounty hunters for the first time ever. And it was just like, oh, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Like these guys are fine. And I remember playing you in a practice game,
Yeah.
and you're just cutting through
Ranges
everything,
on-
just pulling off 100 models in a combat phase. I'm like, oh, okay, well this is fun.
It was like immediately you knew from that one practice game right off the bat. It was like, well, bounty hunters is too good.
yeah, okay, well this is a problem. I'm going to start bringing things that are 3 wounds.
Yeah.
Sharpshooters, I talked about it when sharpshooters came out. The armies that benefit from it are also the armies that benefit the most from being Blood Rock. Right? And
And
It's a good
also,
trade.
And also,
Right.
like, shooting stuff that isn't heroes is surprisingly beneficial. So
Yeah.
it was just like,
Turns out you
I'll
just kill all
shoot
the
that other
bodies.
stuff. Yeah.
bodies hold the circles.
I can't. I hate the one drop go first mechanic. I know we talked about it, but
Yeah, maybe
Kills
we'll have
me.
a phone call. We'll have like a dark section where you just run pictures of your celebrations, and we'll be talking over this.
100% on it.
Us holding our big hammers. Okay, so that Games Workshop hammer
Mhm.
that you see hanging up,
The war hammer.
the
Warhammer.
Galmaraz,
Right.
nearly had a very embarrassing moment of like manliness because the one guy went over there and he was like, "Hey, can I take a picture of it?" We were like, "Oh, like we want to take a picture. We
Right.
just won
We're
an
in.
event. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we want to hold the hammer." and so they put it back on the rack and I go to pick it up and like I go to move it. And like it feels like it's stuck, and I was like, "Oh, there must be like a latch or something that engaged here." And I go to look at it, and go, "Oh no, it's really heavy."
But you're already committed.
Yeah, I can't not pick it up
Right.
now. And so I go to lift it, and you estimate this is somewhere between 80 and 100 pounds.
It's got to be in that neighborhood.
And it's all in the head of the hammer. And I'm like, and in the photo, like I'm overselling how heavy it is, but like in my head, I'm like, this is this is really
Take the
heavy.
picture now. Take the picture now.
And so you come over to
Just take it from you.
and I was like, Nick, this is very heavy.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Brendan, yeah.
and I saw in your eyes this like what I must have seen as I went to go take it off the rack, which was, oh, this is in fact quite heavy.
Right.
I too am now in the same predicament that you were in.
I have
Please
to
take this photo
seriously
now.
Right.
This, in fact, explains why Behemoth was killed by Galmarez.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
swung at by like a 1,000-pound hammer.
Anyone who could swing that hammer,
Well, you can throw it.
oh man, yeah, that'd get it done.
Get a lot of things done.
So what do we think? Is there anything else really to talk about right now? I feel like it's kind of a really a lull right now.
Well,
since
I have questions for you guys.
Go for it.
So I guess you excluded. So you heard us talk about Teams event. Both of you have never participated in an event like
I
this,
have
and
not.
I have been very adamant that this is the best way to play Warhammer. Would you guys be interested in playing a Teams event after what we've talked about here? I'm guessing your answer's no.
My answer is definitely yes.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason is that
You can outsource your thinking
no,
to someone else.
No. The number one thing that I like that's not playing Warhammer is talking about and like theory crafting Warhammer. And it sounds like you guys are building lists together. You're working out strategies together.
Yep.
And that actually equates to winding up with better matchups, winding up with like you finding a way to work your terrain so that you're not pulled to the edge of the table, all that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that I love doing. I'm not great at it, but I love doing
Sure.
it. And being able to do it where you're all working together, or at least the four of you are working together, and finding a way to translate that to the actual game. That sounds awesome. Like I would do that for sure.
It wouldn't be the only way I want to play, but I definitely want to play it. Like, I think there is something nice about the randomness, take all comers.
Sure,
style
I wouldn't
of
want
one.
to do this for every tournament either.
Right.
One or two a year, and like you go all in on
Yeah, and like you said, you just bring filthiest filth. That
the field was nuts in terms of like the lists that were good.
There were very few teams. Oftentimes, when I go to a tournament, I will look at the list, and there'll be 25% of absolutely cutthroat lists.
Yeah.
Right, and then 50% of these are normal lists that I would expect at a tournament, and then maybe 25% of this is somebody's passion project.
this is what I have.
Right,
Yeah.
right, or something in that spectrum. And sometimes those are very good, compelling lists, but the team's environment, it was very much not like that. There was a small cohort of
There's like 2 or 3 teams that we were looked at like they are here for something else.
right. They're here for the hobby. They're here for the socialization, which is awesome.
The
But
4 of them want to play the tournament together.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
And I've got to say, when we were done with this, the amount of fun and congeniality and the great time that was being had at the mid to bottom tables made me envious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as much stress, right?
It's one of
Right.
those things like the sweatiness that
In the atmosphere
top,
that is
yes.
table 1.
Yes.
And-
it takes away sometimes.
Well, I loved every bit of it. I loved that competitive environment. I loved that everyone that we ran into was there to win. And I'm the sort of person who loves and thrives in that, right? I'm here for it. But it is definitely effort. Right?
It's a lot of effort.
And
we were exhausted going into
I was
day
going to say, how
3.
tired were you guys?
Oh, we were
3-day tournament
we were
sounds
smoked.
like a long tournament.
The nice
and then
thing-
after
well,
that
it-
drive home had to be
The
Drive
drive
home
home was
was
great. Had we not won, maybe the
the
drive home
windows
would have
down.
been different.
Sure.
But the fact that it was 2 rounds a day, and the fact that their scheduling and pacing was very much reflective
Very
of
chill.
only being 2 rounds a day, you had a lot more time.
I
to
mean,
relax.
some people had to sit through 3.5 hours of zombies. on a
Well,
They
you
could
know,
have conceded whenever they wanted.
Right.
It's
You
always
have
out
the
there for
option.
them.
Right. But that pacing made it manageable.
What a shit attitude.
Well, so one of my favorite parts about this was like people were like, "Oh, we were going to put you on a clock," and I was like, "Go ahead, you're going to clock out." Like,
All I'm doing is moving models. You have to do stuff.
I don't even
I'm never
move
having
sometimes. I just go.
combats.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Just-
All I'm going to be doing
I'm
is
here.
rolling
Yeah.
I retreat.
sixers.
My turns in reality are very short. I move up and then I don't do
Anything.
Yeah,
I'm rolling saves and wards in your turn. That's it.
Yeah.
but you could concede at any time.
Right.
Concede whenever you want.
But the 2 rounds a day made it much more manageable for me. Now I'm old, but normally the 3rd round on day 1 of a 5-round
Yeah,
event
it's
is
on
what
my
kills
feet.
me, right? And so that night I'm shot. The next morning I'm shot. I never had that experience because it was 2 rounds per day for 3 days. I was tired by the end of it, but I never had that absolute wall after that 3 round that I normally hit. And I really feel myself having to push
What
through
was
it.
start
Didn't have
time?
that.
9:30.
Something like that.
So you
Yeah.
guys were actually done fairly early in the evening.
Mhm.
We were done like 6:30. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It was only right. It's 8 hours of of round with an hour lunch break in the middle. So you're only there for 9 hours plus the getting there a little bit early and then in my case packing the zombies back up into your
Yeah.
tray and bringing it back out to the car. We were back at like 8:30 every night. After dinner.
Absolutely chill time schedule. Absolutely chill event. The organizers were great. I had a lot of rules questions over the course of my games.
They were awesome about it.
They were fantastic. Very clear, very fair. There was a ruling that I didn't agree with, but it was delivered in an absolutely great way, and I had no qualms about any of the way it was handled. I thought they did a fantastic job. I would absolutely recommend the event to anybody. The Kansas City Open next year. Again, we.
It's going to be a yearly event.
I
It
hope
wasn't
so.
a special.
I hope they
hope
put
it
on
is.
at least one team's event every year because all I want is just one team's event in this country that is run in not an insane way.
Right.
So our team, is normally Run ATC. That's normally what the shirt says. Because we've gone to ATC in years past, and I had gotten very frustrated with ATC after the last year.
What specifically?
Basically, they didn't have a TO until the 11th hour. The pack was written for 2nd edition. There was just a bunch of stuff where, if I'm getting to Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's either like a 14-hour car ride, or a flight and then a rental car and then a drive. And for team event, I'm basically committing to I'm going to get whatever army I need for the team event. Hopefully, I already have it. But if not, this becomes quickly a $2,000 weekend when you factor in the cost of the army. And the first year that they ran it, it was fine. It was 6 teams. It's what it was. It was their first year, and then the last year was effectively the second year they held it as teams, and I want to say it was like 12 or something like that. But it was just like 40K. The 40K side is 100 plus teams. That's fine that we don't have 100, but why can't we seem to run this event?
Yeah.
Our team was effectively helping their organizers, who did not have a tournament organizer, write the pack. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They eventually did get a TO and eventually did run, and then their swag was delivered late, and it didn't get back to us for like a year. And I was just like, I will go play teams somewhere else.
Is ATC run this year? Was it?
Yeah,
run this year?
it's running this year. It's in July,
Okay.
something like that. So we'll see how it goes.
Now is ATC four factions from each major?
It used to be. It's not anymore. So
Okay.
So that was one of the things I really liked was you had to play one.
I like that.
I
idea.
did too. You had 4 players, 1 player out of each Grand Alliance, and then you also had best in each Grand Alliance. So you had this mini competition between each of the Grand Alliance player on each of the teams to jockey for.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really
like
like
that
that.
stuff.
I loved that, and I
Yeah.
kind of wish that they would have done some singles awards with the Kansas City Open stuff.
Yeah.
And that's one of my pieces of feedback to Games Workshop because they had 16 teams, they had 64 players. You absolutely could have done best individual general,
Right.
Best individual paints, best in order, best in death, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there would have been some really fierce competition for some of those awards, and it becomes a difficult thing for your captains to balance. Okay, our team's not in a great place, but this person's still eligible for award. How do I get them,
Sure.
into the best position possible? And and that's also something to consider. Right? Hey guys, like we're out of it. The placing for the team, I'm going to put on the back burner because Nick has a shot at best general at 6-0, despite the fact that right. But that's a conversation that can be had with everybody, and hopefully as a team, you can all buy into that idea, and that your captain would do the same thing for you if you were in that spot, which is cool. But like with this, there were some front end communication issues for the Kansas City Open that was definitely some of the feedback that every team had. Right. So I hope they address that. But in terms of a team event run day of, this was the best one I've been to. And all I want is just one event that I can rely on an annual basis, that I'm going there, we're playing teams, and I'm going to try and bring the best group of people to go try and win. Because this is the third year we've run the team. This is the second year we've gotten first place in something. The other year we got second. So,
Not
pretty good.
bad.
Yeah.
I will say there was also a singles event at Kansas City.
16 people.
16 people.
Oh my God.
The winner
2
got
tickets.
all expenses, or the two winners, best overall,
And
best general, both got all expenses paid tickets to Atlanta.
We did agree that if we went 0-2 day one, we were dropping and playing, and we were playing in singles.
I mean, a 1 in 8 chance.
A 1 in 8 chance. If everything was coin flips, a 1 in 8 chance. That was the hottest ticket in Warhammer that weekend, and nobody showed up for it.
Crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there was other events going on, and some people have kids.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I mean,
it was the same weekend as
your
Worlds.
kids can wait.
But,
Yeah. Oh man. Wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of mind-blowing. They had a huge 40K scene there, both teams and individuals. They had Kill Team going.
The Kill Team stuff looked super fun.
The Blood Bowl players?
They were having a blast.
Oh, man. Nobody was having as much fun as the Blood Bowl players.
It's like when you go to Adepticon and you go up to the second floor and you go in those back rooms.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like people playing games you've never heard of.
And
They're
they're
actually having
awesome.
They're having the most. It's like, I didn't know there was a Halo board game and people are just having the time of
Like,
their life.
yeah, this is like, 5th edition's terrible, but 3rd edition was neat. And you're like, I didn't know that,
Come back with us to 1998 where we have all our old
I feel
books.
like Dan plays a lot of those once that
Yeah,
tournaments
Dan
that happen
Dan plays
once.
a lot of one-offs.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
it's
he
like
does
you
all
talk,
Adepticon,
you
it
listen
seems
to your Adepticon stuff, and he's talking about this game that nobody plays except for the one time you're at Adepticon.
Yeah, and I have no palate for that, right? I want to do this. I want to dive in, be super fully invested, no half measures. I would hate to walk up to I signed up for this 3-hour session. I don't know how to play this game. Teach me how this works, and I'll decide if I like this game or not.
Yeah.
Dan's very bold for doing that.
Dan does.
And he finds some games that he loves, and there's some games where he's just no, this is not for me.
I do enjoy those recaps he has when he goes to those one-offs and he's talking about
There's
these war games he plays that take forever.
Those, I've thought about what those episodes must sound like to the listeners.
They're awesome.
I enjoy it.
Where Dan is all over the place in terms of what he's doing. He's following what is fun for him, and I am locked in the Age of Sigmar room, either running a tournament or playing in one. I see 3 rooms at Adepticon. I see the ballroom where Age of Sigmar is, the room, the restaurant, and the room where I'm staying.
Yeah.
And that's it. You could tell me that anything happened anywhere else in the convention hall, I'd be like, I don't know, man.
I gotta play in Adepticon one of these years. Every time I go there, I go to the bits guy, and then I just kind of peruse the floor. Last time I filmed a little, hey, this is all the Age of Sigmar stuff, and then I go home.
And there's something to be said about that too.
I would love less days.
Just going to Adepticon and not having any. I mean, I don't know. I feel a little stressed when I play it, and not feeling any of that stress. It's a different kind of nice experience, You're
the first year we went, there was a table upstairs where they do the Golden Demon stuff, and it was like a guy with a towel manta and another guy with just huge Forge World stuff. And they were like, let's just roll our weapons against each other. And they were just doing that for like half an hour. I'm like, this seems like just some
These guys these guys are having the best time here
with their $2,000 one model.
I love walking around and seeing all of the Warlord Titans that are just there.
Right. Yeah, for like the commission
these
painters.
down payments on a car that are just sitting on a table.
Have you gone to the battle where they all fight against each other?
Yes, I would love to play in that event.
There's like a big city upstairs or something that they have just huge titans like that tall. Oh, it's
Love
fun.
that stuff. Boy, we got really far afield.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we really did.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We're
For those that don't know, Brendan is the co-host of the Cubic Shenanigans podcast, along with Dan, that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And he also is the lead tournament organizer at Adepticon, and lead rules judge.
Much maligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, deservedly so. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming
Brendan.
aboard.
His official title is the Lord of Death.
Actually, officially titled, it was given to me as a. So you know those like kind of fraudulent titling companies.
Those completely legitimate Scottish deeds.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for Secret Santa for one of my friends' groups, I got the title of Lord of Death.
There it is.
And then they named a star after you too.
Yeah, and a tree. So it's official, at least in Scotland. So people do have to refer to me.
Yeah.
And Brendan has been a mainstay of the scene for years and is personally responsible for at least 2 rules changes to coherency in Age of Sigmar. So if you don't like the coherency rules, he's responsible. But believe me, before those fixes, it was worse because of him.
I had a unit of 40 skeletons that was in 9 places on the board.
Yeah. Why do you need to address that?
They were not connected.
Thank you for joining us, Brendan. Thank you all for joining us.
Hopefully
for
we'll be
another
getting
episode.
some bad reps up soon.
Yeah.
Baby has been throwing wrenches in and
it turns
tournaments
out
and stuff.
when 2 hosts have babies within like a month or so of each other, we've got 2 coming.
And they're the
very
recording
soon.
sites.
Right.
Yeah.
And one that just happened that does cause a delay on videos. But we appreciate you joining us for this one. And let us know what you think about Teams format, if it's something you'd enjoy, down in the comments below. And any other thoughts you have about this upcoming GHB, because I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see
We're just
what
a few
comes
hours
of it.
away.
Right.
You
So
know where a great place to
we
talk
think.
about that is?
In the Discord.
It's in
What?
the Discord.
In the rules discussion section?
Yeah, it's
Where-
right down here.
where would you find a link to that?
Right below
Oh,
us, right
down in the
here.
description.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.